when you've got everyone has access to AI, they're going to really be able to leverage the efficiency gains from it. And so everyone, a year ago, there was about, I'd say 50-50 skepticism versus excitement. Now it's really shifted towards, we've got AI committees, we have AI mandates, and we're pretty excited about the technology. Now it's just about who we work with.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. We've got a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Ben Lewis, CEO of Ensis, a company helping enterprise teams automate proposal generation with AI without changing their workflow. Ben's had a fascinating career from product roles at Microsoft and Google to co-founding TapJoy and Karma, which was later acquired by Facebook, and now tackling the RFP bottleneck with cutting-edge tech. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So I like to get started with learning a little bit about your background and your journey. What got you into tech in the first place?
I've been interested in tech, computers my whole life. I was playing video games since I was about 5 years old, and I was coding them once I was in middle school and high school. That's what I did every day. I'd go home after school. My friends and I, we would make video games or make libraries or make software that actually helped our lives be even more productive. And it was just a passion of mine. And I knew what I wanted to do before I even got to college. It was never a question in my mind that I would go into computer engineering at Michigan.
Very cool. So from there, once you got into college, how did you find your way into some of the big tech giants?
So, it's an interesting story. Like I've been, as I said, I was very passionate about this my whole life. I was even working in tech at high school. I was coding for a local website development shop. And when I got to college, my friends and I started our own company to develop websites for local businesses. And this was in, 98. And back then, the web was still relatively new. So a lot of places didn't have a website or had a super old school website. So we could make a few $100, like beer money, whatever, just, coding websites for folks. And we built for various Detroit, Ann Arbor based businesses, and a lot of car dealerships need websites. So that was great. And that was just not overly profitable, right? We were just doing this in our spare time, but it worked out really well. And they gave me a lot of experience. And so ended up starting a company after freshman year. And we even raised a little money, my friends and I, to build it up. And so for 2 years we did that. We hired some of our friends over the summer, and we built sort of this marketing site. It was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. We didn't know exactly what we were doing. There was no AWS back then, so you actually had to handle hosting yourself and had like servers and deal with all that IT infrastructure stuff. But it worked out well. And my real internship, though, a year later after we sold that business, was at Microsoft. They came to school, and this was before the Xbox launched. And they showed us what the Xbox was going to do. And I said, "This is incredible. I have to work there." So I messaged recruiters and, "What's it going to take to get me an internship on Xbox?" And they were great about it. And I got to go work on Xbox. And then after my senior year, I worked there full time for a year. And, it's one of those things that U of M, University of Michigan, a great university, top engineering program. And so, we had the recruiters from all the major tech companies coming to our school. I was pretty fortunate to get a job at Microsoft at the time, working on a product I was really passionate about. But, all the big tech companies were there, sans Google, which was still pretty young at the time. It was a tough economy, so a lot of my friends would struggle for a few months because back then it was like that big dot-com crash. Remember that?
Yeah,
2001.
right.
everything was online. Valuations were through the roof. Companies were paying each other these revenue deals like, I'll give you $1 million if you give me $1 million in their valuation. Remember that time? And so it was a little tough. But Microsoft was still a fantastic company. Worked there for a year, and then um, I actually was applying to business school basically as soon as I got started at Microsoft. And so I was fortunate to get back into Michigan, where my then fiance and now wife was still at school, so that worked out really well. And I got to go back to Michigan to go to business school, where my intention was to learn business skills to be able to start, a more legitimate company post graduation.
So how much did your time running your own business, how beneficial was that when you were trying to get in with someone like Microsoft at the time?
Are really helpful. The fact is, there's always going to be a few companies that are like top companies that are going to get a ton of applicants. Back then it was Microsoft, then for a while it was Google, and then Facebook, OpenAI, right? Like there's always companies where everyone's going to apply. They are the hot places to work. And it does help to have something to stand out and differentiate yourself. And I can't speak to what interviewing and recruiting at those companies is like right now, but I have to imagine, they're going to get tons of applicants who can pass all the cooking interviews. And so having these stories to tell about real product development and what you're really learning, I've got to imagine that was still really helpful. It certainly was to me at the time. And I really appreciated that experience. Um, and so, yeah, it got me a job. I'm pretty sure, I think being at a good school also didn't hurt.
Sure.
I think it also helped me when I was applying back to go to business school. I was relatively young for someone applying to get an MBA. Usually you have about 3 to 5 years work experience, and I had one. So, I knew I was on the younger side, but I also knew that uh, at the time I felt like extra years engineering wasn't going to help me with what I wanted to do in my career. So I figured if they'll let me in, I should do it.
So you've always kind of had that entrepreneurial bug. You've always wanted to run your own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Even before outside of coding, I was starting dog walking businesses. We were starting like investment businesses. My friend and I would after school, if I wasn't, we're the coding friends, I was with my friend, and we were, trying to buy things in bulk and sell them. Like we've always been interested in starting businesses. And so I knew I wasn't gonna work a real job forever. But it was about learning the skills and meeting people and putting myself in the opportunity in order to start something. And what really led to me being able to do that was I was at Michigan, and I was very uh, ingratiated with that entrepreneurial community at the Michigan Business School at Ross. And there was a business plan competition, and a really good friend and I applied for this business idea, and we won $10,000. And that was great. Like, and this is, I don't know how often like $10,000 is a prize. That was a pretty hefty prize. And so that money sat in a bank account. And for like a year, I got a job at Google. I was thrilled to get a job at Google. And I was getting married and have a real job at an amazing company. Like this was a great place to work. But the money just sat there in a bank account. It was a shared account for my friend and I. Figured we would start a business with it one day. And then one day happened. So I'd been at Google for about 3 years, and the App Store launched. iPhone launched. For a year, there was no App Store. So if you wanted to do anything on your iPhone, this is when it first came out. And Steve Jobs, he's in San Francisco, and he's doing a big talk, and he's showing the iPhone. It was arguably one of the greatest product launches of all time. I was very fortunate because back at that Marissa and I ran the program I was in at Google. We all got to go watch Steve Jobs do his thing, and that was like just a fantastic announcement. But the iPhone back then, he's like, listen, we're going to have phone, internet, messaging, phone, internet, messaging, and we're going to combine all these three into one device. But there were no third party apps. So every app on there was purely because Apple wanted it on there. And there was a web browser, and you could make these like iPhone compatible websites, but that was it. There was no Flash. It's very famous. And there was no apps. So for a year, all you had was what Apple wanted you to have access to, and still was great. But then Apple's like, we're gonna have an app store, and any developer can make an app, and it will go through a review process, and you're gonna be able to download third-party stuff. And so with that announcement, my friend Lee Linden and I decided to build a video game with that $10,000. So we found people that knew how to code for the iPhone. I actually did not. I knew how to code for Android. I had been at Google. I made some Android games in my spare time before
Mhm.
that. I was an engineering. I was a product manager, and so I wasn't even an engineer. And so we were like, let's get a real developer who knows Objective-C. So it was like a tough language. I'm like, you know what? We're gonna find third parties. We've got the 10 grand. We ended up spending about 20 total. So we put a little bit of our own money in to build a game. We're like, and I'd been playing this Flash. You remember Flash?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we played this Flash game that my friend played. It was like a tower defense game. We said, let's build a tower defense game. And so we wrote a spec, got the people to help out as well. Like, hey, we need someone to do some graphics, whatever. We got these third parties developers to build the game. And every day, I'd come home from work and I didn't have kids at the time, so we had like all this time. So I'd play our game and we would make changes to all the values, like the gold and the hit points and all this stuff. And we had a plan to launch it and charge $5 for the game. And this was back in 2008. So the App Store had been out for a few months at this point, and you charge for stuff. And it's like, oh, people will pay $3, $5, $10 for like good titles, good software, good games. And this was just how things were done. Lee Linden, my co-founder, and I, he had done an internship at Kleiner Perkins. He was at Stanford Business School at the time. He did his MBA internship at Kleiner Perkins, and they did this thing called the iFund, where they invested like $100 million in all these companies whose goal was to build apps for the App Store. So that was a pretty sweet deal.
Wow.
We know them, and they were charging $10. Which made sense at the time. And we were gonna charge $5 for our game, but right before we released it, this game called Field Runners came out, and I remember this really well because this game looked amazing. So I go, we're like, Lee, this game is better than ours. He's like, yeah. How are we gonna compete with these guys? Their graphics are fantastic. Like the game's just better. Uh, and so we said, well, let's just make our free game. Let's make it for free. And if we make a free game, people won't be as much a competition with this $5 game. That's what they were charging. And we'll put ads in there, and we'll probably get about $5 worth of ad impressions from this game. So we didn't really know what we were doing at the time. And so we launched it, and it turns out a few things. Number one was that free is way more powerful than paid. Like a free game was going to get 10 times the downloads of a $1 game because even if it's just $1, right? It was less than a cup of coffee, right? Thought process doesn't actually translate, and we know this now, right? At the
Right.
time, there wasn't like a list of best practices for launching. Everyone was charging, but now we know that free is just way more powerful than paid. So we did that, and we were immediately number one in the App Store. And we were
Wow.
staying number for all of December in 2008. Like when people were getting all these new iPhones for Christmas, they would open up their iPhones, they would see our game there. So it was kind of a crazy time for us. It just blew up, right? Come on, we were like, this was a spare time project for us. We were not getting the kind of ad money we thought though. Way
Hmm.
less. Way. We had a good friend at AdMob, which was like the number one iPhone ad network at the time, and his name was Shoaib. And he's like, listen, Ben, you guys are downloading, like you're requesting more ads than everyone else combined, and we just don't have enough ads. So we would ask for an ad, and it would not show an ad because they didn't have one to show. And if they did have an ad to show, we wasn't paying nearly what we thought we might get out of ads. And back then there was ads were pretty boring. They had just like this little banner at the bottom of a screen. You do it
Yeah.
between levels. And now ads are way more complex. So we ended up building a system where you could earn a new tower uh, in our tower defense game by essentially trying out somebody else's app. So we built that system,
Interesting.
and that worked really, really well. So it's one of those things where like there were some networks doing this on like web-based games, and we were the first ones to do it on mobile, and it blew up. So like basically less than a year after we launched, we were doing like $500,000 a month, then eventually $10 million a month in revenue through this because we it worked so well for our games that other developers of games wanted to do it for their games, and so we built this ad network where you could either advertise your app or you could try to monetize the virtual experiences in your games. So we built that. It's called TapJoy. Uh, love the domain name. Lee bought that domain name. He was like big into domain names. He bought that one, and it was perfect for us. Uh, went through an acquisition at one point. Company, for a while it was like the largest mobile ad network on the planet.
Wow.
Then things shifted, but we left actually. in 2011 because we just didn't want ads to be our whole life. Long story short, started Karma Mobile Commerce, had fantastic investors with Sequoia and Kleiner Perkins. Ended up, TapJoy ended up running for another 10 years before it sold for, I think, 400 million or so. And Facebook, before it turned into Meta, ended up buying Karma, our mobile commerce company. And it was a year in. We had just launched. They said they wanted to do what we were doing, and they were either going to compete with us or they were going to buy us. And they made it a very compelling offer. So we sold. And no regrets. It worked out really well. It was a great place to work. Great, and they made it really easy to integrate what we wanted to do. We ended up building, sadly, another ads, like e-com ads inside of Facebook.
Hmm.
Uh, and that worked out really well as it's, generates billions and billions of dollars in revenue for them today. But I left in 2016, started another company. Lee and I still great friends. He started an investment company. I started another startup. He's invested in that and Ensis, my latest.
Tell me a little bit about what you're working on right now, where
So
this concept came from.
so when my last company, Limbics, we sold it in the summer of 23. And I had some time with my co-founder, John Sockel, to figure out what we wanted to do next. We knew we wanted to start a company. We knew we had access to fantastic employees and fantastic investors. And so with that, we wanted to leverage artificial intelligence that these new like LLMs had clearly shown what they were capable of. We wanted to leverage that technology to solve a real world business problem. And we did a lot of testing of potential problems and to see if they were worth solving, where we talked to potential customers, people who faced these problems. As an example, one of the problems we looked into heavily was in quality management systems. And if you're building software in a regulated space like finance or healthcare, which is where Olympics was, you have to build on a quality management system to make sure your product doesn't have bugs and you handle things properly. And you have to do these things called SOPs, which we thought would be great if a product manager could take a spec and turn it into SOPs. It's a big time saver. So we investigated that pretty heavily as an example. But one of the other pain points we felt throughout not just Olympics or that previous company, but also our entire careers is responding to RFPs and RFIs. For people who are unfamiliar with that terminology, request for proposal, RFP, or request for information, RFI, is where companies or government agencies who are interested in procuring something new, either a service or a product, they send these out to potential vendors, people who can actually provide that. So a simple example would be if there is a local town hall or city hall and they need lawn service done. They might send out a request for information to potential lawn service companies to see what kind of information they should be asking about in their request for proposal, where they say, we are looking for someone to do lawn care X days a week. This is what they need to provide. And then the lawn care companies will go and actually see that and write a proposal about how they intend to fulfill that contract. And if your job or your company is supplying a product or a service to large organizations, including governments or large enterprises, like in the private sector, oftentimes you are getting a significant portion of your revenue through the procurement process through an RFP. And so we've done this. And so a lot of times take weeks to months to respond to some of these RFPs. There are a lot of organizations who have proposal writing teams with proposal
Hmm.
managers and proposal writers whose entire job it is to write these proposals. And they have a success rate of anywhere from 25 to 75%, depending on the industry and type of company. So you can spend a lot of time writing a proposal where you get nothing. And so we thought it'd be a great idea if we could use artificial intelligence to make that process easier. And the idea would be a company who has a lot of consistency in their proposals. So if they're like that lawn care company, as an example, is roughly doing the same thing for all of their customers,
Hmm.
as opposed to, say, like a design agency who's going to have very different services for their customers, right? But if you're a lawn care company, you might have very consistent proposals you're writing. So we said, give us a few of your old proposals. You're going to upload them to a very secure database where we've got them parsed and it allows us to know the type of services you provide, how you normally respond to specific requirements in an RFP or an RFI. When you get a new RFP, you're going to upload it to Ensis.ai. We're going to parse it We're going to extract all the requirements, such as you need to mow the lawn on these 3 days, you need to do lawn mowing, you need to do bushes, that sort of thing. We're going to extract all those requirements so that you are able to address them in your proposal. And then, based on what you previously put into your old proposals, we will make that first draft for you. Here's the requirement, here's how you do it. Requirement, how you do it. We then take all of that, right? The requirement response. We use artificial intelligence to again convert that into more of a narrative proposal, which is what a lot of these customers are looking for. So it looks like, here's what you want, here's what we do. It flows a little bit more clearly and cleanly. And then what we do is we take that entire proposal and we compare it to that list of requirements that we used AI to extract to make sure that every single requirement has been addressed properly in your proposal. So that way you don't get disqualified. For instance, if they say you need to do lawn care on weekends, you make sure that you say that in your proposal. So that's a big help in saving time and increasing quality. And that was where we started based on a lot of research we did talking to potential customers, making sure this was a problem worth solving, making sure they would pay enough money to justify the cost of sales, making sure it's worth adopting new software in their organization.
So at what point did it become clear that this was going to be a viable business? What were some of the markers that you came across that told you, okay, this is legit. Let's pursue this one.
So it was interesting. We were early on, I would say even before we wrote a line of code, just doing that pre-sales research where we talked to potential customers. We also then pre-sold the software to these companies and said, hey, listen, sign this thing. You can be your beta customer. You'll use the product. We'll call them co-development partners. You'll use it as we're building it. And we get to observe you and learn what works and what doesn't work for you. And that will allow us to make the software ideal for you. And then you might buy it later once we're done. And so uh, that was a really good sign early on. And we had about an 8-9 month beta period with the software. Once we had a very early MVP with just that core functionality I just mentioned. And then we had a lot of refinement over those 8 or 9 months to make sure it was a product that could truly be helpful and impactful to these organizations. But what was really interesting was, initially we were sort of had this blanket approach to people who are writing proposals. We thought there's government contractors, there's enterprise, there's federal, there's also state and local contractors. Like there's a lot of different companies out there. We didn't have a great idea of who we were targeting or what made us truly different than other companies in the space or even the status quo. And so what was really impactful was near the end of last year, as we were observing companies using our product, it gave us an opportunity to say, you know what? We have a way to be different for a certain type of company. And there are a lot of companies out there that provide software that I just described. And most of them, on top of that software, are putting proposal management functionality around assigning sections to various people, like task management, assigning reviewership and authorship opportunities to various people, and tracking proposals from start to finish. And they're pretty heavy-handed in that approach. And some of them have specific functionality for federal contractors versus like private sector or state and local contractors. Uh, but what we saw was an opportunity to differentiate and move away from that portion of the industry and focus exclusively on companies who like their current process, who weren't interested in changing everything about the way they write proposals, but instead want to leverage AI and allow themselves to maintain the current velocity. And for some of these companies, these website-based approaches were never going to work. And the reason they can't work is that they're not like, if you're in the middle of writing a proposal and you want someone to take a look at something, and if I got to send them a link to a website where they don't have an account and they haven't passed security before, it can be particularly difficult, if not impossible. What a lot of these companies do, if they're using one of those other products, is they download it into Word, send the Word file, because that's what they're normally used to using their AI, and then that's it. They're done being able to leverage AI. Unless they want to just copy and paste back and forth from a website, which is unfortunately very time consuming, and you miss out on all the major benefits of AI if you're constantly copying and pasting. You don't just get to have a single source of truth for your document. So we decided to go all in on companies who are using Microsoft Office and don't want to switch to Microsoft Office because either they've got a lot of employees who are using Office and are comfortable with it and don't want to learn a new tool, or, and this is very common, they're a lot of times working with external partners. Sometimes they're the prime and they've got subs, sometimes they're the sub and somebody else is the prime. But in no version of the world are they sending a link to a website to those external partners. They're sending a Word doc. And the idea there is if you have an Ensis account, and your organization has adopted Ensis and you have the Ensis add-in for Word or Excel in your organization's Office suite, you get to access the AI. And of course, all those company documents that have then been parsed and stored right within Ensis. And if you're an external partner, you don't have access, then you're seeing a regular Word doc. And so that's been a big win for us, right? There's certain companies for whom now we're not the right choice because they're comfortable using a website. They want a lot of those proposal management features and they want to do everything on the web because they're proposal
Good.
managers and that's how they've been doing it. And that's fine. We're okay not working with those. But for the other companies who have not adopted one of our competitors' products because they don't want to switch the modality they use to write proposals, we have the right tool. And that's, comes back to that like business school education about segmenting the market and picking a target segment for where we can have a natural advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, because without that Word or Excel add-on, there's a lot of what you're describing that I think most businesses think at least could be accomplished just using ChatGPT, right? Or they just plug it in and can get something similar.
Yeah, that certainly comes up. And like there's two things here. Number one, with the add-ins certainly put the AI in a far more convenient place for you to use. The other thing is like if we're talking about comparing to say a generic chat GPT or Microsoft's Copilot, which actually is already embedded in Word and Excel.
Hmm.
is that The key thing here, and really what our core secret sauce is our AI knows how your company normally responds to things. And so there's this thing called a knowledge library or a knowledge base. Most large companies have one. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's implicit, where there are resources that your company uses, like how we normally respond to X. Sometimes it's a Word doc somewhere. Sometimes they've got a knowledge library software. It's a little different than, say, a resource library, where you might have like a SharePoint folder or a Google Drive folder with a bunch of your images and PDFs that you normally send out. And Copilot, ChatGPT, these are more generic LLMs. They're accessing the open web and they can be pretty helpful. Hey, Copilot, tighten up this wording. Hey, Copilot, like check my spelling. That, of course, is fine. But if you want to actually respond to factual questions with accurate information, you want AI that knows all about your company. So that's what makes Ensis unique. Or we have that database. It's a very specific silo database to your company where you've uploaded old proposals. We also take employee resumes, product specs, marketing materials, sales materials. We take all of that. Like just give us a link to a SharePoint folder as an example. We ingest it all, we parse it all, and now we have this accurate information. So we have a zero hallucination policy with our AI because of that, because we have access to the information. And so, that is the key here. And with that, it really allows us to expand so we can build on even more functionality that leverages AI knowing this. The major win here as well is that a lot of companies have, when you get to a certain size, you have full-time employees whose job it is to manage this knowledge library. They're constantly pinging subject matter experts within their organization to make sure things are accurate and up to date. And you have this gigantic key value store of here's like how many employees do we have? It's this, like it's our company like revenue, it's this, and you have this, you're trying to keep it up to date. AI really can mitigate the work that person has to do to keep that knowledge base up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. What size are the clients, the companies that you work with typically?
Anywhere from 50 to 5,000 employees. So on the larger side, like we went through a lot of work on the security side of things. We built the ability to do custom deployments so we can deploy onto your private cloud. Um, if you don't want any information to ever leave your network, that's something that we have capabilities of, and that's something we built into product. We don't have self-serve, so you can't just randomly sign up on Ensis and start using us. It's not designed for like that one person shop necessarily. It's the major benefits are when you've got a lot of people writing a lot of proposals and you want to really leverage that AI-based knowledge base and have consistent and accurate answers across all these employees and save them time as they're writing proposals. It's great for companies that have dedicated proposal writing teams, but it's also fantastic for companies who have sales folks writing proposals a lot and they want to help those salespeople get back out into the field on quota carrying jobs.
How are you seeing the receptiveness to AI right now among the clients that you're reaching out to? Are they pretty open to it? Are they still skeptical? Do they have major concerns?
You know, they're really open to it. In fact, most of them are starting to demand it. They're afraid of being left behind, right? I think at some point it does become table stakes when you've got everyone has access to AI. They're going to really be able to leverage the efficiency gains from it. And so everyone, a year ago, there's about I'd say 50-50 skepticism versus excitement. Now it's really shifted towards we've got AI committees, we have AI mandates, and we're pretty excited about the technology. Now it's just about who we work with.
So let's talk a little bit about where you're at as a company. How large are you guys, and what is your growth trajectory right now?
We are 9 employees today, so we're still, I would say, relatively small. Our growth trajectory, we're just getting, we just launched in March. We're sort of just getting started. We've got about a dozen customers either signed or in the pipeline, about to sign. Enterprise sales can take a little while, but we're getting there. And I'm pretty excited about the response we're seeing so far from these early customers and these early users and the efficiency gains we're driving. The growth trajectory, your standard enterprise SaaS growth trajectory, where you've got companies signing up, traditional sales model, right? There's certainly some value we get out of the brand marketing and the socials, et cetera, but really this is about individual outbound sales.
Yeah. What is your current go to market motion? I assume with your beta testers, that was largely through referrals and people you already knew, leveraging your network. So
Yeah,
what's the plan?
sales, leveraging our investor networks. But yeah, we just hired that night. We had 8 employees until a week ago. Now our 9th employee's job it is to go reach out to companies we've never met before.
Okay. So what are your goals for this year? Now that you're on the market, what's your target?
Just growth, right? Grow from that first dozen or so customers to hundreds.
Are you currently raising, or how much have you raised for this
We
venture?
raised $4 million. Most of that was done in 2023. It was sort of spread across 2 rounds, but it was like 2 months apart. But we're not currently raising. We likely will later this year. There's been a lot of investor interest in this space, and so our goal will be to raise additional capital to really expand the sales side of the business.
So how has the reception been so far? You're a month and a half in, or something along that line.
Yeah, no, the reception has been great. The fact is that the Word add-in is an Excel add-in. Those are big wins for customers that do the majority of the work in those applications. And so, it's really nice to see the reaction, especially when you're showing somebody, say, like the Excel demo, where you've got, a column, you just select, hey, fill in these cells. It goes, and then like there's values there for the majority of those cells. And that's just this experience that's fantastic. And for Word, you're saying like, hey, like I've got this giant thing to fill out. And oh wow, with Ensis, like we just got customer house yesterday, like you did a fraction of the time. It's like, oh, we did this in like less than a quarter of the time it normally takes us. So that was really cool to see.
Very cool. Very cool. So hypothetically, if you had a magic wand looking at the year ahead, what is one thing that you'd need to go absolutely right, or one thing that you would change about the company as it stands right now that would get you to your goal, where you want to be in a year from now?
I think the key thing is to truly be able to put metrics behind that sales funnel process so that we can say, oh, we need these many like SDRs, these many AEs, this many on support, like to truly have those metrics and be able to say, we're going to spend X dollars and it's going to lead to X times Y over this many months. And that's, we're still like building that muscle and moving from founder sales to that more legitimate sales team process. But if we can do that, ultimately the key to spend money to make a lot more than that is where SaaS becomes a true success point.
Yeah, once you have that equation of X equals Y, then just increase X and Y goes up faster, right? That's
Exactly.
that's the ultimate goal. Very, very great. So I guess what kind of support or partnership would actually move the needle for you right now?
Good question. A partnership where there's a company that has access to a lot of potential customers for us. I don't think we're looking for product support right now. There certainly are some areas where I would love to see a solution. As an example, if someone has we talked about an Excel add-in and we have a Word add-in, we don't have the ability right now to use AI to automatically fill out an unmarked PDF, as an example. But if just a lot of times you get these things, they've been scanned, right? And we can't just use AI to fill that out yet. And actually, that's actually a difficult problem. So if someone had solved that, that'd be a great partnership where we could use your API to solve that problem. But no, I think really a partnership with Ensis that's beneficial for us is if you have access to a lot of potential customers. And so sometimes our customers have access to other customers, and that's been great for us. But really, it's about if the patients are well connected.
So I know it's still early. What are you seeing in terms of the sales cycle? Because you're not a SaaS where it's someone can just go and sign up, right? So what is the sales cycle looking like?
So we're doing our best to like shorten that cycle. And the difficult thing is for these large enterprises, we're asking them for this product to work. We need your own proposals. These are sensitive materials, and we said we can deploy on your cloud if you like. So you don't have to give them to us. But regardless, we're talking about even if we're deploying on your cloud, that is a sensitive process. And so organizations require, of course, like an MNDA, and that's easy. But then there's usually a VSQ vendor security questionnaire that we have to fill out, and it goes to their IT team. Sometimes the IT team needs to meet with our Eng team or the CTO to like truly give that okay to be able to take their sensitive information. And we're saying how much cyber liability insurance we have and that sort of thing. Our previous company was in healthcare, and so we're used to this process. In fact, it's a lot faster to sell to our current customers than it was to sell to, say, like Kaiser or Anthem. Uh,
Mm.
Still, that's just part of the process. For us to truly get these companies on board requires a lot of times that level of bureaucracy. And it's tough because any single person in that chain can like just kill the deal, and no one has the
Mhm.
has to say yes, like make it happen. And so it can be a bit time consuming, but ultimately that also makes us sticky and allows us to truly drive a lot of value.
So is data privacy probably the biggest sticking point for most clients right now or prospects?
How is it bureaucracy around it is, right? Like we haven't failed one of these ever. It just takes time because you got to get people on the phone, you got to get people involved to respond, and those people aren't necessarily feeling the benefits of our software. And this is just one of the difficulties. Anytime you're selling enterprise SaaS, you're going to face sort of this similar level of difficulty in driving adoption, and that you do need to make sure you're checking all your boxes and crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Uh, I mean, we're really fortunate. We built a team with that level of experience, so we're able to do a good job when it comes to these processes. It's just can take a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. That's all I've got for you today. I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate you sharing your story and what you're working on, going deep like this. It's been really fascinating. So, Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Sure thing, Chris. You can go to ensis.ai. That's ENSIS.ai, and feel free to sign up for a demo. We'd be happy to see if it works for you.
Great. And for those listening and watching, please subscribe, leave us a review, and tune in next time. And as always, keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.